Hey, people, and welcome back to the Pi Huaita YouTube channel. Now, you might be wondering, Pi, why are we talking about China and space? And to that, I would answer, dear viewer, because it's my YouTube channel. But more realistically, okay, hold on. I'm interested in the anthropology of space. So, what is people's lived experience as it relates to space in general? Whether that's like the culture that underpins how people view space, whether that's like the lens that people see space now and what people are envisioning space to be like in the future, like all of that is super interesting to me. And I think China is a great country to look at this from. So with that, we've got to understand like what the heck is like a baseline, a primer, if you will, of China and space. Just the general, no kidding basics of like the current modern right now situation of China and space. So this video aims to do that. There will be a follow-on video to this. Well, maybe a couple follow-on videos. I'd also like to look at this topic from Russia's perspective. I think it's interesting. There are two very different systems here, but all that to say, I'm interested in China and Russia. I know primarily on the channel nowadays I talk about China, but I think as we talk about space, we would be doing a huge disservice to not talk about Russia. Just think of the first space race and the Soviet Union and how Russia is a legacy to that. And think of the right now space race and how China is absolutely in the game. So, all that to say, let's talk about China and space. Again, this is a primer, so it's not looking to be super in depth. To that end, we're just going to talk about three quick things. The first is the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force. The next is the Chinese National Space Administration. And then the next are the Chinese space launch facilities. So, with that, let's go ahead and talk about the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force, or the 中国人民解放军军事航天部队. Say that 5 times fast. It does literally translate to the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force. Yeah. Okay. With this, I just thought it'd be interesting to start off here with a quick quote from a Chinese blog slash news article where it's like, hey, look, the Chinese Aerospace Force, these guys are peaceful, but the American Space Force, those guys are not peaceful. Anyways, I just find the contrast kind of interesting. But with that, just very briefly, so the Chinese Aerospace Force, it used to be its own, or I guess it used to be under the People's Liberation Army Strategic Support Force, which dealt with some different functions such as logistics and cyber and information and aerospace. What they mean by that in this case is just space. That went away in 2024, and the aerospace force was kind of elevated in stature. With that, there have been 93 total space launches with the aerospace force in 2025. So just last year, 93 total space launches. So call it one every 3 days if you wanted to break it out. Maybe one every 4 days if you wanted to break it out like that. In 2025, they put 370 payloads into orbit or thereabouts. So again, from 93 space launches with their space launch vehicles that we'll talk about here in a sec, 370 payloads. So each launch is putting more than one satellite into orbit. As of January 1st, 2026, they had 1,353 satellites in orbit. And there's a list of a couple satellites from the Space Force fact sheet. I wanted to point Beidou out. That's their version of GPS. It literally means north, like Big Dipper is what it literally means, at least as we translate it into English. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so they've got capabilities in space and satellites in space. Crazy, I know. I also just wanted to show this. The start picture was a different angle of these guys. These guys are in the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force. And of course, in the comments section, you have people who are just riled up about the Aerospace Force, or really in this case, like the Victory Day parade celebrating the 80 years since the defeat of the Japanese in World War II, at least from a Chinese perspective. And the comments like, it is my dream that the motherland will dominate the world. Glory to the People's Republic of China and glory to the Chinese people. Of course, the word for glory in this case is wan sui, which literally means 10,000 years, which is the exact same thing as bonsai. Anyways, fun times, but you get patriotic people no matter where you go. And he got 1 like, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, we're going to move on to the Chinese National Space Administration, which is so much easier to talk about, or just to say in Chinese, the 国家航天局, literally the National Aerospace Administration. Like, yeah, okay, cool. There's two big things I'm going to talk about with the Aerospace Administration. The first one is going to be the Tiangong. This launched in 2022, which is the Chinese version of the ISS. This was built as a response to China not being allowed on the ISS. They're like, fine, if we can't play with, America and Russia, we'll just go play on our own. We'll build our own playground. So they built the Tiangong, or the Sky Palace. Chinese astronauts are called taikonauts, which comes from the word taikong, which is a word for space in Chinese. But taikonauts, they're up there doing similar tests to astronauts and cosmonauts, so science and all that jazz. Another program I wanted to talk about is the Chang'e program. Chang'e is their general lunar program, so all their stuff that they're doing on the moon. I have an image on the right of the Chang'e 6 at Chang'e Liuhao. Chang'e, of course, is the Chinese moon goddess, and you'll know if you're a devoted follower of the channel that I've actually played Chang'e multiple times in little high school films. So I'm very familiar with the story of Chang'e since, I'm literally her or whatever. So anyways, Chang'e 7 is supposed to launch this month, and it's looking to search for water ice on the lunar South Pole. And oh, by the way, the moon is a huge topic right now in space. Y'all may remember the Artemis 2 mission that happened, where they circled and they went around the back side of the moon and back. China is planning to send people to the moon as well, scheduled for 2030. The American missions, for reference, are scheduled for 2028. But all that to say, the second space race is alive and well. And, I tell all my friends, and I'll tell you this, in our lifetimes, we will see lights on the moon. And it'll just be a matter of whether they're Chinese or American. So anyways, moving on now to the Chinese Space Launch Centers, there are 4 main space launch centers that we are going to talk about. I'm going to talk about them going from north to south. Okay, the first one is the Jiuquan Space Launch Center. This is the oldest space launch center in China. It's out in the middle of nowhere, Gansu in Inner Mongolia province. We call that the desert. If you all remember me talking about the Jade Gate Pass in my last video, which is way out in the west of China, same deal. This Jiuquan Space Launch Center is way out in the west of China. This launch site does military and commercial launches, and to that end, it can host a whole bunch of different SLVs, or space launch vehicles. And just common terms, we might just call them rockets. So you'll see a couple of these abbreviations come back up, specifically LM. Sometimes on the actual rocket itself, like the one in the image here, we see CZ. Both of these mean Long March. LM in English is Long March. CZ in Chinese, Changzheng, is also Long March. That comes from the Long March that Mao Zedong and the boys took back during the Chinese Civil War, so they didn't get blown up by the nationalists. The facility is also capable of launching rockets or space launch vehicles different than the Long March. There's a couple listed on the slide here, but this is the only space launch center where they're sending people to space. So that's pretty cool. So every taikonaut on the Tiangong, or if taikonauts do anything else, they're all launching from the Jiuquan Space Launch Center. The name behind this is actually interesting. It means wine spring. I think it was during the Han Dynasty. A general conquered the area, and as was custom, he was given this huge bowl or bowls of wine. Back in the day, wine was not diluted, and that's important because that people are like, oh great, you won, okay, you get all this wine, now drink. And the general was like, no, I can't drink, not until all of my men have drank the wine with me. And so what he did is he poured that wine out into the river, hence making it like a drinkable form of wine. You could drink the undiluted wine, I guess, but putting it in water was customary. So put it in the spring, and the spring turned into wine as he poured all that in there. So all his troops were able to drink. He was able to drink. It's really like a nice Hallmark movie kind of thing. So anyways, Jiuquan Wine Spring, and Jiuquanshi, which is the city of Wine Spring. So great. Okay, the next one is the Taiyuan Space Launch Center, going north to south. It was founded in 1966 in Shanxi province. Has 3 launch pads, and it can launch a whole bunch of long marches. It's named for Taiyuan, which means highest source. I love this image. It's I really watching any rocket just as it's lifting off. Those are always some of the coolest pictures. Okay, Next is the Xichang Space Launch Center. This was founded in 1970 but began operations in 1984, located in Sichuan province, so you can see all the mountains there and beautiful Sichuan province. Two launch pads with a whole bunch of long march capabilities. And this for this video, I guess if it wasn't clear already, we are not going into the differences between all of them. We do not have time. In fact, I could dedicate a video to that and we still wouldn't have time. So all that to say, this launch site's important because it was where the first launch of the Chang'e program took place. So if y'all remember back where I talked about the Chang'e lunar program that started, at least the launch was here. It's also the primary place where they're launching things into geo orbit. That's an orbit where essentially the satellite takes 24 hours to revolve around the Earth. So what that means from like a person standing on the ground perspective is it looks like this satellite is staying stationary in the sky. So it's named for Xichangshi, which means Western prosperity. Great. And I've actually messed up on the slide. There's a little something, but whatever. That's a treat for you. Okay. Next, and our last space launch center that we're going to talk about is Wenchang Space Launch Center, which was founded in 2007. The first launch was in 2016, and this space launch center is a favorite of Chinese tourists. Not only is this kind of like a Chinese Hawaii, if you will, you'll see like just in the image, like the kind of looks tropical because it is, but it's easier to watch a I said see a lunch from the site on the slides. No, it's easier to watch a launch from the site. A launch. I'm sure you can see a lunch out there too if you really want to. But it's easy to see a launch from that site, especially as stuff goes maybe like over the ocean. You get some good shots from there. There's also not just like military stuff on here. I'm pretty sure there's also commercial like launch sites on this space launch center as well. So commercial and military shaking hands. Anyways, it's named for Wenchangshi, which means cultural prosperity, or the city of cultural prosperity. So yeah, real original with the name. Okay, so that was a very, very fast overview of China in space, a very quick primer. There will be follow-on videos to this, both from the anthropological perspective about Russia as well. So if you're interested in space, stick around. And until then, I will see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.